everyone, it's Nikki with Thrive Bodywork in Alexandria, Virginia. And in my last video, I introduced you to what exactly is structural integration. I introduced you to the idea of the three-dimensional spider web filled with magic goo in which our bones and organs and muscle fibers float. And I kept tossing around the term aligned. And so today I just wanted to give you a little functional anatomy lesson to show you what I mean when I say the body is aligned. So first of all, I want you to go ahead and point to your shoulder for me. Now, usually when I ask people to do that, they point right here. And I always say that's not wrong, but like in so many things in structural integration, it's not complete. So, it's called the shoulder blade for a reason, okay? Now, the second part of the shoulder complex that everybody forgets about. I've quizzed doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists on this, and they always forget this fact that the clavicle is part of what's called the shoulder girdle. Now, the Latin word for shoulder, it actually translates to yoke, like the yoke that goes over an oxen's head. And you can see why. If this is the clavicle and this is the shoulder blade, that whole thing just gets kind of placed on top of the rib cage. The only place that this entire situation attaches to the skeleton is here in front at the sternoclavicular joint. And by the way, the arm just hangs off of this. So for all intents and purposes, I sometimes don't even really count the arm as part of the shoulder girdle. I think of the arm as kind of its own thing. Anyway, the fact that the shoulder girdle attaches here to the rib cage means it's 1,000% dependent on the rib cage and where it's placed in gravity for its placement, right? Now, everybody, we age here, right? We all want to return to the fetal position. Like, find me the person that ages this way. That would be so fun for me to study. So, as our rib cages collapse down and succumb to gravity, our shoulders go along for the ride, right? So the clavicles come down and the shoulder blades come up. So they kind of get into the neck. We hunch over and we're sitting or standing like this, and we know that that's bad posture. So we try to shove our shoulders down, creating a new twist, a new crumple in the bed, when really the problem we need to solve is to lift our rib cages up, right? And you can see how if I'm living here, that's going to cause all sorts of what's called glenohumeral joint, the actual sort of rotation joint inside the shoulder. That's going to cause all sorts of problems. And it's going to cause all sorts of kind of, difficulties up here. We always get the permanent kind of between the shoulder blades, right? And this stuff always, is always just glommed up. When actually the solution to that problem, the solution to that pain is actually to lift up the rib cage. Now, we lose the fascial capacity to do that, and so that's one of the first goals in structural integration, is to actually open that rib cage and bring you more upright with more elegance and ease. And then the shoulder difficulties will really start to take care of themselves. Now, the ribs we all think of as a front thing, right? My ribs are here. Well, they actually begin and end in the back along the spine, and then they just wrap around to the front, meaning that each individual rib is 1,000% dependent on its vertebra and the spine's ability to stack itself. Now, when the spine can't stack itself elegantly, the rib cage does what I call de-individuates, right? It kind of gloms itself together as a unit, and each rib doesn't have the independence of movement that it's meant to have, and that also then doesn't allow the thoracic vertebra to have any independence of movement either. So this entire sort of complex just gets locked together, and the only place we can move is at the beginning and end of it. So C7-T1, Dowager's hump, neck problems, and T12-L1, low back problems. So the spine, like any good skyscraper, is 1,000% dependent on its foundation for its ability to stack upright, right? The Leaning Tower of Pisa is leaning because its foundation is sinking. So the foundation of the spine is the sacrum, okay? The sacrum needs to be 100% annoyingly accurately perpendicular to the horizon in order for the spine to stack itself and not need muscular help, which muscles, again, they're the organ of movement. If we're using the organs of movement to hold ourselves in posture, they get real mad real fast. Lots of back problems, right? Spine to stack itself, which allows the ribs to feel safe and independent, individuate and open and be up nice and happily in gravity, which allows the shoulder girdle to just get placed on top of it. Now, the sacrum is dependent on the hip girdle or the hip bowl for its ability to perpendicularize. The hip girdle needs to be horizontal in gravity in order for the rest of the stuff to happen happily. Now, in order for the hip girdle, almost done, the hip girdle to be horizontal in gravity, it needs to be able to individuate around this, it's called the femoral acetabular joint, just the ball and socket joint of the hip, okay? Now, the problem is, it's just kind of the way we live life, and especially the furniture and lots of just a ton of reasons why in Western society, or at least, you know, in societies that use a lot of chairs and stuff like that, the back of the femur, the sits bones, and the front of the sacrum get really glued together. And so when we go to move our femur inside the acetabular joint, right, move that ball inside that socket, this is all stuck to the spine, to that sacrum. And so what happens is the entire hip bowl ends up coming with us, right? And so we lose the ability to individuate that joint. And so the hip bowl can't work itself around the femur in order to be horizontal in gravity. So that's a second major goal in structural integration, and in any session that you have on my table, is I'm working to really tear that, that sounds terrible, to really break that apart and individuate that femur inside that hip complex so that the hip can horizontalize, the sacrum can perpendicularize, the spine can stack, the ribs can open, and your shoulders will just go home. So, thanks for sticking around through all of that. Hopefully that explains a little bit about functional anatomy and what I mean when I say aligned. If you have any questions, shoot me in the comments, or shoot me a text or anything. ThriveAlexandria.com if you'd like to get yourself on my table and feel firsthand what it feels like to have a nice up rib cage and a nice independent femoral acetabular joint. And hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.